All right, and we're back for another episode of the Lakers Fast Break podcast. It's Gerald Glassford coming right back at you here from Pop Culture Cosmos. The Lakers Fast Break, Inside Sports Fantasy Football, and Game Source. We truly appreciate everyone out there listening to all of our great shows, and if you can, please give us that 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. Plus, if you can like, share, support, or do whatever you can to take care of us right here at the Lakers Fast Break, or my good friend show, NBA Draft Junkies, and also the Lakerholics.com. Always got to give them a shout out. I know Laker Tom really shouted out at me on the weekend episode, but we won't go into that. But if you get a chance, please support everything you can right here at the Lakers Fast Break. It is truly appreciated. Well, he's back again. He endured the NBA playoffs with me. And off camera, I did talk to him. We were negotiating on him becoming full-time host of the show with me. But the words "not on your life, Gerald" came up, and I said, okay, we'll go ahead and move on. But he is my good friend, and he's going to probably come back when the NBA playoffs come around. So it's always good to have him there. But he's going to come back many more times as a guest. It is the man behind NBA Draft Junkies, the place to go for NBA draft info, news, profiles, and so much more. It is NBA Draft Junkies on YouTube, where there's over 13,000 subscribers. Every time I talk to him, it seems to go up by a few hundred. So please keep on with the love at NBA Draft Junkies. Plus, he's going to be updating his mock draft very soon because mock drafts are out there. Like myself, I'm going to update mine at popculturecosmos.com, but you got to check out his mock draft when it comes up, NBADraftJunkies.com. It is my good friend indeed. It is Mr. Rafael Barlowe. And Rafael, thank goodness you're not here on the weekends. I'm glad you're busy, my friend, because it's been getting pretty violent on the weekends with the Lakerholics.
I mean, yeah, I guess that's what happens when there's no basketball. Too much free time.
Oh my gosh.
Hurry up and get the season started.
A special shout out to Laker Tom. I hope all is well. I hope you're going to go ahead and not sharpen the knives too much, but we will get back on with another Lakers championship roundtable, hopefully this weekend. Plus, also, I have interviews coming up with NBA draft prospect Mike Lenoir. Also, as well, Chris LeBron from the Off the Ball Podcast Network. He's going to stop by as well. So a great week. Took kind of like a few days off because I was working on some stuff, including something that just dropped today as we're talking. It is a championship rewind, part 1, looking back at some of the great conversations that I had with a whole bunch of guests in the first part of the Lakers championship season. So look for that as well on the Lakers Fast Break podcast channel. But there's so much to talk about, my friend. And before we get into the NBA draft, because you and I can talk about NBA draft until, well, let's say draft time. I want to talk to you about some of the rumors that are going on in the past couple of days, because ESPN, besides laying off hundreds of people, they've also been very busy actually doing NBA news work. And a couple of things that they've reached out on is, first off, Chris Paul rumors are galore. They're out there galore. I mean, You're talking about New York, you talked about a couple other places, but the most interesting trade rumor came up yesterday, and him becoming an integral piece for the Phoenix Suns. Your thoughts on Chris Paul possibly joining the Phoenix Suns?
The first thought that comes to my mind about Chris Paul and the Phoenix Suns is Robert Sarver is known for being notoriously cheap, right?
Yes, very much.
So Leon Rose is in charge of the New York Knicks. Chris Paul is a CAA client. If I'm not mistaken, Devin Booker is a CAA client. Now, all of a sudden, Robert Sarver wants to, allegedly take on one of the biggest contracts in the NBA. All this tells me is there might be some pressure about trying to make Devin Booker happy.
Well, you got to remember they had that 8-game winning streak in the bubble. I don't know.
They had the 8-game winning streak in the bubble, and I think
it's
that was good.
Full scored?
No, I don't think they can maintain it, obviously, but I definitely think that, if healthy, because Ayton missed like 25 games, and
yes,
and all of that. And so, if they win a few of those games, then they would have been a playoff team. So
Yes.
I think the playoff push that they had, plus, I just think that if Sarver continues to be cheap and Phoenix doesn't make the playoffs next year, the year after that, then I think you're going to start seeing rumblings about Devin Booker being unhappy.
I agree with you. Yeah.
And I think with Leon Rose in New York, I think it helps. I think it's going to help the Knicks, as I've mentioned in previous podcasts. And then also other teams, like, for example, Minnesota and Phoenix, those teams have all-stars that are young and they're CAA clients. Even though they're signed long-term, if they don't make the playoffs, then I think you're going to start seeing the grumblings. And CAA has a history of pushing their guys to LA and New York and to larger markets. So I think with Rose going to the Knicks, it puts pressure on other teams and owners to spend money to try to be competitive, because you don't want to lose your clients. And so, yeah, just to me, like, it's odd that the rumors, the two teams you're hearing the most, well, I mean, I guess the Milwaukee rumors have died down, but lately it's the Knicks and the Suns. And Devin Booker's, like I said, he's a CAA guy, and there's definitely, he could definitely put some pressure on management to try to make that happen, because if you add Chris Paul to that team, then they become a playoff team, in my opinion.
That's true. I think they would be very sound in doing so. There'd be a little bit issues maybe with the lack of depth, because obviously if you're trading for Chris Paul, you're going to leave you open and vulnerable, but hopefully you can pick that up in free agency or whatnot. But you and I both have heard the rumors that the Knicks, seeing their position, are wisely saying, you know what? Throw your bad money contracts our way. Throw your bad money contracts, but your picks that way as well, because they're trying to acquire assets. They're in asset acquiring mode, it looks like, from all appearances. Yeah. They're not having any delusions right now of saying, oh, yeah, we're going to try really hard to get the 8th playoff spot. They're talking about building towards the future, and I think that's really smart.
Yeah, and to me, they're building assets to be able to acquire one of their CAA guys. That's just my opinion.
I know, I agree with you. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's because that'd be an easier path. It's just kind of like with Anthony Davis. He just kind of showed the power of, even though he was under contract, how him and his agency were able to pretty much force a trade to the Lakers. Now the CAA guys probably have more years left on their contract, so it won't be as easy, but it's likely.
Yeah, very much likely. And there's also more rumblings that I know you've heard from ESPN, again, talking about it and spreading that out there. And that is in Houston with another notoriously cheap, or, well, he hasn't been cheap as far as a couple contracts concerned, but someone who has lost a bit of money in the pandemic, and that is Tillman Fertitta, who a major restaurant owner and things of that nature. Obviously, that industry has been really hard hit by the coronavirus. So there's been talk now with Mike D'Antoni leaving and going to become an assistant coach with the Brooklyn Nets, and also Daryl Morey leaving and becoming the president of operations with basketball operations with the Philadelphia 76ers. You have a new general manager and a somewhat new, he did coach a little bit, Steven Silas, but a somewhat new coach. You might not have the best situation for both Westbrook and Harden. So there's now talk that Westbrook and Harden, they haven't asked for a trade, but it sounds like there's some rumblings in both of their camps right now.
Yeah, I mean, that's weird to me. Westbrook doesn't really talk to the media like that. And
but it sounds like an agent.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, not saying that it's false, but I mean, those are two guys that don't really have any leaks about anything, in past history. So, I mean, I think when Harden was traded last time, we didn't know about it until it happened. even when Westbrook was traded, I don't even think there were a lot of rumors about that. But no, I mean, I could see. I mean, the one point report that I did read that seems the most accurate was they were concerned about the direction of the team, because they may feel like they're not championship or bust. So yeah, I mean, I think that part is true. If I were Houston, even though they don't have a lot of money, I think that DeMarcus Cousins, I would take a shot at him, even though he's rumored to already have a handshake deal with the Lakers. But I would definitely, try to add him. Maybe Serge Ibaka. I think they have like the taxpayers MLE, something like that.
5.5, I think.
I saw
5.5
one
million?
for nine. For nine.
Okay.
Yep. So, yeah, I mean, it's just weird to see that Houston is. You don't know the identity of the team anymore, because when you think of Houston the last few years, you think of James Harden in isolation, D'Antoni offense, no mid-range jumpers, yada yada yada. All of that is gone now, as far as like the people that were in charge of that. So, I don't know. I mean, I don't think anything happens within the next few weeks. I imagine Westbrook and Harden both being there. But I do feel like if they trade Westbrook because the owner's being cheap, then Harden is not going to be happy.
I agree with you. And that's going to mean that possibly a trade for Harden could be in the works. If that's the case, do you see it happening sooner or later? Maybe trade deadline at the earliest?
I don't know. I mean, they both have so many years left on their deal. Yeah, like, can you even get a fair trade for James Harden?
No.
Like, whatever team that he goes to, he's going to want to go to a winner. They'd have to deplete their pretty much everything to make it work. So I think he'd be difficult to trade.
Unless he wanted to be traded. If he made rumblings that he wanted to go, then you really, it's forced your hand per se.
Yeah, and I still think it ends up like the situation with Carmelo in New York. They end up giving up so much to make the salaries fit that you don't really put yourself closer to a championship.
Yeah, I agree with you. But I think if Houston gets off to a poor start, then the rumblings will get louder and louder, and it'll be very interesting to see if that's the case. Because like we talked about earlier, I mean, Tillman Fertitta, he has had a lot of financial issues because of the coronavirus. No question about that. And if that being the case, he's not going to be able to spend money. And Houston is already at the cap. I think they're over the limit. Correct?
Yeah, and that's why I don't know, man. I just figure like if you're an owner of an NBA team, your main goal should be to win. And maybe it's my background in Europe where, the NBA, if it doesn't make dollars, it doesn't make sense. Well, I shouldn't say just the NBA, but in America, period. Wow. In Europe, they're willing to lose money to win because winning is the most important thing. And whoever is in charge of the finances, it is not their main job. Yeah. Tillman Fertitta is not going to go broke. I mean, if he loses 50% of his net worth tomorrow, he's still in the top 1% of the world. And so I just think like if you're going to own an NBA team, you shouldn't like nickel and dime the fans because of what happened with your personal money.
Absolutely.
But it's not my money to spend though. So it's easier said than done.
Easier said than done, though. But if you buy a team, I would assume you would want to try and, yes, maybe as an investment opportunity. Obviously, that's the goal is to make money with it. But the goal oftentimes should align with where you want your team to be at. If you want your team to be a winner and win championships, that usually equates to a more profitable outlook going forward as well.
Yeah, I mean, you got James Harden in his prime. He's won the last 3 scoring titles. So I think like you try to max out while you have James Harden in his prime. Then if you have no shot, then that's when you cut costs, but not right now.
At some point they'll have to think about it because they have very few assets outside of the Eric Gordons, outside of the Robert Covingtons, and of course Westbrook and Harden, because they don't have many draft choices because they traded some of those away to Oklahoma City in the Westbrook trade. So they're going to have to look, if it doesn't get much better in Houston, they're going to have to look at those options going forward.
Yeah, and that's the thing I liked about Daryl Morey. When Daryl Morey and Leslie Alexander were together, they never bottomed out. They were consistently in the playoffs every year. I mean, I think what's the last lottery pick they had? Maybe was it Markieff Morris or Marcus Morris or something like that? Maybe
like that.
They had one more after that, but they've consistently been able to make the playoffs, and they've never tanked or, bottomed out. I mean, since Yao? It seems like it's probably seems as if it's been like 15 years or something like that. I know they have the longest playoff streak now.
Yeah. So it's something to definitely take a look at when it comes to Houston, but we'll see. We'll see what happens. It's very interesting because the season is coming right around the corner, my friend. I mean, it's pretty much a done deal that the 22nd of December is going to be the start date. You surprised it happened? I know we've talked about this ad nauseum during our playoff coverage, and also in our previous conversations, we were talking early December, then we came to maybe January, Martin Luther King's birthday, or in February. So, now it's changed and flip-flop all over the place. So now it looks like it's December 22nd that they've ratified an agreement on between the players and the owners. So I want to hear your thoughts on that. I mean, is it too much too soon? I guess it's okay. I really can't complain when you're a Lakers fan because you know what? Yes, it is a short rest, but you know what? I'll take the championship every time.
Yeah, I mean, it's only a short rest if you're the Lakers or the Miami Heat. The majority of the teams, it may be similar to a normal offseason, but then you have the teams that didn't make the playoffs. They have not played since March.
Yeah.
So, there's like 14 teams or something like that haven't played since March. And plus, dollars, it makes financial sense to have the games on Christmas. And, I was just joking a few weeks ago. I was like, yeah, what do you do on Christmas if there's no NBA? Like, you really got to pay attention to your family then. Get the board games out.
Exactly. Or watch those college football games that nobody wants to watch.
Yeah. So, I just think it makes sense. I talked to a player, and he was like, I think he told me that if they would have pushed it back to January, they would have had 22 back-to-backs or something like that. And then also, you just want to get the schedule. Yeah, the money on top of the back-to-backs. But then you want to get the schedule back on track for next season.
Next year, yeah.
And so to me, that's the main thing.
Now, 72 games in a season seems like it's a more realistic and plausible idea because you and I see both with most of these playoff teams, they usually cruise control those last 10 games of the season if they've got a position locked up. But I want to ask you this. I don't think that's going to be something that's to be the norm. I think 82 they'll go back to once it gets back to somewhat of a normal surroundings per se, and hopefully we can go ahead and have this a lot better for the fans coming in and the season gets aligned. I think we'll go back to 82, but I will kind of miss the 72 game season just because it seems like it's a better fit for the NBA in 2021, which will be at that time. Yeah,
I mean, like they had to. Everything is financially driven. That's why I think they'll go back to 82.
Oh, yeah.
And so, but yeah, I mean, 72, it's going to be a condensed season. It won't be as condensed as we thought it would be, but I could see a team like the Lakers kind of coasting. But I think next year the NBA is going to be so competitive that you can't really afford to coast too much. I mean, maybe the Lakers can.
I know LeBron had talked about, or at least Obama had talked to LeBron about cruising through the first period of time. And I had noted that to Laker Tom in our discussions. And while most of us in Lakerholics agree that maybe the Lakers will take it a little bit easier in the first part of the season, he thinks that even if that's the case, they're still going to end up being number one. I don't think if you take a break off, if you take some time off, or if you say you just don't play to your full potential, or you take extra breaks, you take extra days off, things of that nature, I don't think you can expect to become or be number one in either conference if you're going to do that.
Yeah, I mean, I think a team like Golden State, depending on what they do with this draft pick, they have the assets to be able to acquire a really good player. And I don't really see them kind of cruising it because they're very well rested.
Denver
Should be good. And yeah, I mean, I think if there's going to be fans, what they're talking about, then there is going to be an incentive of trying to get home court.
Yeah. And then the LA Clippers, obviously they're going to retool a little bit, but still be very formidable and could possibly even be the favorite as well, along with the Lakers. So there's a lot of things to look at there. So I say with some hesitation that I think the Lakers will go ahead and maybe rest a little bit. I think it's in their best interest to go ahead and say, you know what, we'll give LeBron a couple weeks off, or we'll give AD a week or two off here and there, just so we can get them primed for the playoffs, because that's the end goal, is the playoffs. And you've seen that the best teams can go ahead and play well either at home or on the road. They seem to go ahead and be effective anywhere, including a bubble. So whether it's the Lakers or the Miami Heat, for instance, they seem to play well in any environment. So I don't think with a full crowd or full load of people out there, as far as being, because of coronavirus and all that it's going to matter as much, because we saw that was the case. It seemed like the best basketball teams, or the best teams playing the best basketball, seemed to come out on top.
Well, yeah, but look at it this way. Okay, let's say Golden State had been the number one seed, and miraculously we can have 100% capacity in May or June.
Yeah.
Does anyone want to go to, I wanted to call it Oracle, this new arena and face Golden State, knowing that they're going to have home court advantage? They're still a championship team. Yeah, Chase Center. Yeah. So it's going to be interesting. I think some teams will try to cruise, and then they'll realize that they can't afford to, and then they're just going to keep going.
Well, we'll see what happens, my friend. I'm very interested to see. It's going to be a very hectic time. I think it's like the calm right now before the storm, because as we're talking
right away,
1 week from today, my friend, I can't believe it. After you and I were seemingly waiting forever,
yep,
the NBA draft is coming. And then 2 days after that, NBA free agency. And now, while it's not going to be the marquee player NBA free agency, there's still going to be some interesting free agents out there for teams to get. Is there anyone, before we go into the NBA draft, is there anyone out there in NBA free agency you're interested in seeing go to maybe a championship level team or a playoff team, or somebody that's really going to make a name for themselves in NBA free agency this year?
I think wherever Serge Ibaka goes could be big. I've seen rumors of him going to Lakers. I saw one rumor saying he's already going to sign with Houston because he's close with Harden and Russ. And then if he's going to lose money, it makes sense to him to go to Texas, where there's no state tax. So I think wherever he goes could help teams out. Yeah, there's not a lot of teams that have money. What is it, like Detroit, Charlotte, Atlanta, New York? I think Atlanta's going to spend. I think this is a pressure year for them.
Yeah.
Because if they don't make the playoffs, I think there's going to be changes there. I think bringing in Nate McMillan has to be something that, I don't know. Lloyd Pierce has to be like, okay, is this guy, breathing down my neck? But, it's the same thing we thought about Jason Kidd going to the Lakers. We thought, okay, oh yeah, Vogel, if he gets off to a slow start, or LeBron doesn't agree with something, Kidd is already there. But no, I just think that Atlanta is going to try to, make a playoff push. So does having the 6th pick really benefit them, adding another young player? So I think they'll try to, the Drew Holiday rumor makes a lot of sense to me. The one I saw this morning, that makes sense. And then I don't know if they'd have any money left after adding Holiday, but I think more so the trades than free agency, because I mean, some teams may be looking to cut costs. I think a Blake Griffin trade could be very interesting. Also, you've been hearing that he's healthy, which he's hasn't played a while. Another one I saw that I thought was pretty interesting was like Andrew Wiggins, the number 2 pick, and Minnesota's pick next year for Bradley Beal. That makes a lot of sense for the Wizards, in my opinion.
I'd do that.
Yeah. Which, if you end up getting like Wiseman, Wiggins, and,
Could
a
be
first round.
Yeah. Cade Cunningham or any of the first rounds next year.
Yep. I have this theory, right? Mark it
Although it's
down.
probably going to be protected, though, right? I would assume 1 to 3.
Yeah. Well, I don't even know if the Minnesota pick is or not. I'm not sure.
Mm-hmm.
But I have this theory. Mark it down. It is November 11th. And
Marking it down now.
OKC is going to be bad. Cade Cunningham is going to be the number 1 pick for the Oklahoma City Thunder. You keep him in Oklahoma. And I was talking to a friend of mine he's an NBA player. He's from Oklahoma City. And he says, never in the team's history have they not had a superstar. So he's interested in seeing, if there were a full capacity of fans, how are the fans going to react? Because they've been spoiled. They started off with Kevin Durant and Westbrook and Harden, and then they were able to have Paul George, Carmelo, but Westbrook was always there. And even this year, without Westbrook there, Chris Paul, I don't think he had a big buzz going into the season, but the fact that they were winning helped them out. And so if, Chris Paul is moved, let's say he's moved in that deal for Phoenix. So who are the fans going to watch? I mean, are they going to – I think Gilgeous-Alexander is definitely going to be a good player, but yeah, so I think the NBA may kind of throw them a lob so they can have, Cade, even though he's from Texas, but just kind of stay in Oklahoma.
I don't know. I think the New York Knicks are really trying hard to tank next year. So
if they don't pay Van Vliet or make a trade for Chris Paul.
That's what I'm saying. If they don't do that, or they can't do that, if they don't get it done, I have a feeling they will try hard to tank for Cade Cunningham. And Cade Cunningham would be a mega star in New York.
I just don't see Tibbs agreeing with tanking. I just heard from a agent of a player that they had their players in New York at this mini camp, and he said Tibbs worked the hell out of them. It was just a voluntary mini camp, and he's on it. So yeah, I don't see him tanking.
Not learning from his past mistakes, is he?
Well, so I had this argument with somebody, and he has such a reputation about playing his guys heavy minutes. I'm like, if you go look at Eric Spoelstra's players' minutes, they're the same. Like when LeBron was playing with Miami, he was averaging like 38 minutes a game. And it's like, for what? They were good. They were dominating the East. He didn't need to average 38 minutes a game. And, to me, Spo is from the Riley tree, which I think Tibbs was an assistant under Riley in New York, if I'm not mistaken. So
I think you're right, yeah.
So it's just Tibbs gets the flack for it.
He does, because the results aren't behind it 100%. I mean, he did have a playoff run here and there, but yeah, for the most part, it's been a lot of behind the scenes as far as the player minutes and things of that nature. But I don't know. I mean, if that's the case, and New York tries to tank or unintentionally tries to tank because they just have an awful team right now, that could be the case where Cade ends up there. But you're right, Oklahoma City. There's going to be Detroit. If I was Detroit, I would trade Griffin and also as well. You have Derrick Rose there. Trade him for future assets.
Yep.
Do what you can to go ahead, because next year's draft, you and I will be in a lot more jovial mood next year's draft, I think, than this one. So
I don't know. I mean,
because I've heard as many as 7 players. From what I'm seeing and reading, I'm looking at the players right now, and even already started looking down on video. There's at least 6 that catch my eye more so than this year's.
I don't know. I mean, to me, I guess I judge draft classes by 5 years after draft day. You just never know. I mean, I think they're protecting these kids and putting them in the G League. They're not going to play against anybody, so their stock is going to remain the same. Because who are they going to play against? And if they put them in position to where they don't look good, then that pretty much ends the whole G League path program. So those guys are going to hold their stock.
All right. Speaking of stock and draft stock, we're finally going to get to it, my friend. It's 30 minutes in, and I truly appreciate you being part of it. Once again, it is my good friend, Mr. Rafael Barlowe. He is the mastermind behind NBA Draft Junkies. You got to check out his entire experience today at NBA Draft Junkies on YouTube, NBA Draft Junkies, the podcast, also the Run the Floor podcast, and also as well, NBADraftJunkies.com. I just want to apologize first off that I'm no longer the top earner on your website as far as the YouTube is concerned. So I know I've dropped in viewing. I know Alex Pugh has already passed me up. So I just wanted to apologize on behalf of myself for not being the ratings earner I once was when I first started. That mock draft part 1 and 2 I did with you. So just want to say I'm sorry, man.
No problem. I mean, I used to keep up with it, but after I drop a video, it's on to the next one. I haven't really seen. I just know I had one video for you. All of a sudden, like the money just dropped like significantly. I don't know what happened.
I swear I didn't say anything controversial. I mean, my arguments with Laker Tom were just all legit. We didn't say they weren't anything bad. I swear.
Controversy sells.
Yes, that's true, but it wasn't that controversial. I mean, if you're talking who is the best 15th man in the league, and the answer is not Jared Dudley, okay, all right, that's fine. Because I didn't think it was Jared Dudley, but then again, we went back and forth on that. But be that as it may, you can see on the video that he has at YouTube one that actually stuck out to me before we go heavily into the NBA draft, and that is Will Morris.
Yeah.
Now,
I like Will.
I watched this video. He seems like a nice kid and had a lot of sound reasoning behind this. And my friend, I am really high on Alexei Pokusevski. I'm really high on it. But I don't have him near the top 10 yet, because even though he's a top 10 talent, he is not going to be picked anywhere near that high because of the fact he's just so thin and just is not physically capable of the NBA bump and grind. In fact, in some circles, I was watching the CBS Sports mock draft the other day, and they don't even have him in the top 30, just to give you an idea. But I want to hear your thoughts on, when you see something like that and somebody tells you that, and they actually give you some sound reasoning and you're not laughing off the entire video. I mean, how does that make you think like, man, maybe I got to take a second look at him? Because I really like Alexei Pokusevski. I've told you about it. But again, I just don't think he's that high, being number one.
Well, I mean, I look at like past drafts, right? And even NBA teams miss out. So I know, like I think at one point Rudy Gobert's agent was trying to sell him to teams, and teams were like, "No, he's not ready." It's funny. Rudy just liked the tweet yesterday. Did you see that?
No.
Somebody, I guess he, it's from whatever year, I guess 2013, saying that he was going to stay in the draft and he was going to not return to Europe. And somebody commented, well, he'll be back in 2 years. And he liked it. And he just like retweeted it yesterday. But I want to say the tweet had a bunch of likes because people didn't think he was good. And if you do the 2013 draft all over again, what is he?
Number 3?
Yeah. I mean, and so I have a friend that he is a scout for an NBA team. I won't say which team. And he showed me his notes on Giannis. And he says, we need to draft this guy. So he says he convinced the other team scouts. They said, okay, yeah. Then he got all the way up to the top. And then the owner was like, no, we're not going to draft. He's too skinny. He's this, he's that. Thought maybe like, how can I tell how can like when we do the draft and we draft this kid that nobody's never heard of, a name nobody can pronounce, yada, yada. Well, I'm sure that owner regrets that to this day. And with Pokashevsky, nobody has denied his talent. I think the biggest thing is, we know he's skinny, but we just haven't seen him play.
Yeah.
And if he ends up being the best player in this draft, we don't know. Like, I mean, look at Jokic.
Yeah.
So that's why I kind of, I like Will for the fact that he wasn't afraid to say that. But yeah, if 5 years from now, if Pokashevsky ends up being the best player in this draft, I would not be shocked.
And Alex, was it Will? Let me see. It was Will. So if Will is right in 5 years, he will be working for an NBA team. I will just say that right now.
Yeah, but I think a lot of times how scouts view it is different than how a general manager views it. Because scouts, their thing has nothing to do with financial impact, name, marketing. They just see who they think is the best player long term. Yeah. While once you get up to, management and ownership, like I think Denny Avdia could be the number one pick in the draft. I think he could be the best player in the draft, but he's not going to go number one because I don't think we're going to see a European player selected number one, a European wing.
With Avdia, you've got to sell me hard on him because his shooting, it's rough to watch, my friend. I mean, right now, 50% free throw shooter, under 30% from the three-point area. I mean, yes, he's a playmaker, excellent passer, has enough aggression. I really like his aggression, taking off the ball. I mean, how much can he develop that end? Because I don't think he'll ever become a complete player without it. And that's going to be something people have talked about, him being maybe a worse shooting Dario Saric. Other people have talked about him and the likes, comparing him to Luka. I don't know if he falls somewhere in between, but I know his shooting is going to be an issue if it continues like that going forward.
And I can say the same for LaMelo Ball.
and I would agree with you on that. And he's my number one on the big board. That's for me. So
yeah, I think like if you want to just break it down, LaMelo is just as bad of a shooter. He's a better free throw shooter, but LaMelo's a much worse defender. And you have to put Melo in a situation where he has total freedom and creativity. I think Denny is more so of a plug and play guy. But LaMelo's box office. And with LaMelo, you have to worry about his poor shooting and his shot selection. So to me, like everybody in this draft has major question marks.
Oh, I don't disagree with you on that. Yes, every single one of them. That's why this is going to be the most wild draft I've ever seen, because people's thoughts and opinions and analysts out there are all trying to scratch their heads on exactly how to go ahead and every mock draft is seemingly different at the top, the middle, and the bottom. So it's nobody really knows who's going to go number one. Nobody even knows who's going to go in the top 10. So per se, I mean, we've got a general idea, but with Denny, I think if he goes to, let's say, the Hawks, I think he would be a great fit for the Hawks, just because I think it's something that the team would need in that area. Do you disagree if he falls to the Hawks at number 6, I think?
Yeah, but I mean, like, does he start over Collins? Are they going to start him over Reddish, who was, I forgot where he was selected last year? I think the Hawks, just my opinion, I think the Hawks are just a mess. I think they're an overall mess because, one, they don't have any veteran leadership on the team. 2, you're going to have to, I think they've given Trae Young the keys too early. And by that, I mean, like, he has total freedom to do whatever he wants. And they're going to have to build a team of guys that can complement him and make up for his lack of defense. But he doesn't even try on defense. Yeah. Like literally doesn't try on defense. And I think like it's going to be hard for him to win when you have a guy that, if he's physically unable to be a good defender, that's one thing. But if he doesn't try on defense, then you end up trying to surround him with a bunch of guys that are good defenders, but then you may not have enough offense. And then which leads to him having to do more on offense, which means he's not going to do much on defense. And so that's why I think the Drew Holiday I think Atlanta's aware of this, and that's why the Drew Holiday trade rumors, because he'll be another ball handler that will take Trey off the ball some, and he's a good defender. And then bringing in Nate McMillan, who is known for being a pretty good defensive coach. I think all of that is strategic to try to help that team out, because if they don't make the playoffs this year, then I think Lloyd Pierce is done. And I don't think he's done a bad job. I just think that it's going to be tough to build around him if Trey doesn't even try to defend. And if you really can't hold him accountable for a lack of defense, because you can't bench him.
That's true. And yeah, you can't. But you supposedly have a lot of pieces there that you've drafted in DeAndre Hunter, Kevin Huerter, who are supposed to be able to pick up the slack defensively and just haven't done so yet. I'm assuming it's because of inexperience and that's a relatively young team. In fact, it's probably the youngest team still in the NBA. So I'm going to give you credit on that. But bringing in Clint Capella is supposed to help with that. John Collins, I'm not sold on as a cornerstone of the future. I don't know what you're thinking on him is, but I just don't think he's a cornerstone of the future going forward.
Yeah, man, I like Collins. It'll be interesting to see, what they do with him. If they extend him or try to move him. I think Denny would, like you said, I think Denny would help in Atlanta. I just don't know if they keep Collins, then I don't know. Because I think Denny's best position to me as a 4. I see Denny as this role player. I think his potential is to be a role player superstar. And when I think of a role player superstar, I think of a Draymond Green. I think of Lamar Odom. I think of a Tony Kukoc, a guy that is a connective tissue that if he just kind of makes everyone around him better. He's not going to be the best player on the team, but he does the little things to where you got him at the 4. He can put the ball on the floor and create mismatches there. You can, if your point guard is being trapped, you give him the ball in the middle of the floor at the free throw line. He can make a play for himself or for others. I mentioned it before. Like, I remember the finals that I want to say it's the first finals, Cavs Warriors, and Cleveland was trying to trap Steph, but they gave the ball to Draymond in the middle of the floor, and he was able to either make a play for himself or throw the lob to Bogut or find guys in the corner. But he was just a connective tissue that made everyone better. And I mean, as a Laker fan, you think about Lamar Odom. You could play him next to Powell. You could play him next to Bynum. If he got the rebound, he was able to initiate the offense for himself. And I think Denny could be that type of connective tissue.
I just hope he goes ahead and works hard on the shooting, because in a playoff situation, that could be rough. Because if you have them out there and the teams are playing off at him, as a stretch 4, and he's not really a stretch 4, or he'd have to play inside if that's the case, and the offense would have to feed through him.
Well, I think like his shooting part, the free throw percentage part is legit, but the shooting, 3-point shooting it's not bad. It was like in the
the high 20s.
But he played well when they started the playoffs in the bubble, when they had their own Israeli playoffs. He played well. He ended up winning MVP, but they also gave him an opportunity to play point forward. And when they put him at point forward as opposed to just standing in the corner, then, like I said, they won MVP, they won the championship, and he did all the little things. Wow. I think another reason why his like overall his 3-point percentage isn't as high is because he's taking some threes off the dribble. It's not like just catch and shoot. For example, I don't want to compare him to Doncic, but like if you just look at the raw numbers, Lonzo Ball is a better shooter than Luka Doncic. They're just getting them in totally different ways. Lonzo's getting wide open catch and shoot jumpers. Luka is shooting contested side step back Jays. So he's only a 32% shooter, but you don't leave him open.
Yeah.
And so I think for Denny, if he just only took catch and shoot shots, his percentage would be a little better, but then you're not using him to his strength if you just have him standing in the corner.
Two last things I got to hit you up with, and then I'll give you every chance to go ahead and tell everybody out there what's happening in the experience known as the NBA Draft Junkies. Plus, also catch his shows every week on Dash Radio. I want to give him a shout out there as well. First question is there someone that's really sliding up your draft board? I know you're going to be doing your mock draft here in a little bit on NBADraftJunkies.com. And of course, you're going to be obviously taking care of that as well for NBA Draft Junkies on YouTube. But is there anybody that you see sliding up and maybe sliding down in your draft as well?
Yeah, I think Jalen Smith was probably the biggest rise. And for me, this Jalen Smith rise is going to be based off of fit. I think that he is the perfect player to complement Zion Williamson in New Orleans, because you're going to need a big that can rebound and block shots, but you're also going to need a big that can space the floor so Zion can operate in space. So based off of fit, I think that he moves up to a lottery pick. As far as sliding down, I'm in the minority here, but it's Tyrese Halliburton. I have him dropping on my board.
You are in the minority, my friend, because there is a lot of people out there singing his praises right now as a fringe top 3, meaning like 3, 4 in that range type of pick. I've heard his name bandied about quite a bit. So tell me why he's sliding down on your list.
Well, yeah, I think that, if you interview him, like if you had every player in this draft do interviews, I think he's going to come out on top as the best interview, as the best, most likable player that you would want to have on your team. But I think he's a complimentary player, like a real complimentary player. Not even like even though I mentioned Denny, I think Denny could be a complimentary superstar just because he's a Swiss Army knife. I don't think that Halliburton is an engine that can run a team. At least for me personally, I don't like a point guard that doesn't get to the basket. I don't like a point guard that if it's at the end of the shot clock, I can't give him the ball and say create. And so for Halliburton, he's not a threat to attack the rim. He's only attempted maybe like 75 free throws in 2 years. He doesn't get to the basket. I don't think that he can shoot off the dribble, which to me is very important in pick and rolls. And to me, he's like kind of like Lonzo Ball. I think Lonzo's a good guy, a decent player, but you're always going to have another dominant ball handler next to Lonzo because Lonzo doesn't want to get fouled. So late in the shot clock, late in the game, he does not want the ball. And Halliburton's a good free throw shooter. But yeah, he's not a threat to get downhill.
Well, there you go.
And also, I put it like this. Let's say you bring the old school NBA, right? And you have a workout with Cole Anthony and Tyrese Halliburton. Who do you think comes out on top?
Old school, it would be Cole.
Yeah, Cole's going to dive on the floor. I think he comes out on top. I just think he has more potential to possibly be an engine than
he's got a scoring mentality.
And he's a dog. Yeah, he's a dog. I think Halliburton I think he's a safe pick. That's I just have some concerns. He's skinny. He's really skinny, and he's been in college 2 years. So it's like, all right, if he wasn't able to put on weight in the 2-year college program, is this his frame? Is he going to be able to defend multiple positions because he's so light? But that's just me. But I think, anybody that does an interview with him, he's going to wow you with his interview, his IQ. I think that if he goes to Golden State, he's a perfect fit there. But let's say he goes to Detroit. Is he a good fit there?
Because that's been a landing spot for him on quite a few mock drafts.
Yeah, if he goes to Detroit and Derrick Rose isn't there and they move, how is he going to get his assist?
Food for thought right there. Food for thought indeed. Well, That's something to think about because Halliburton's name has been bandied about as a, like I said earlier, as a top choice, someone that's right around, right after the big three that they're talking about, could even sneak in there on some people's mock drafts. And some analysts really love him out there. So yeah, I hear you on that. That's some good points indeed. And if he does not have that aggression, and if he is petrified, like we see with Lonzo, petrified of going to the hoop, that could be an issue going forward in the NBA for him. And that could be something that a lot of teams focus in on defending and how the way they defend him going, into the future as far as the NBA games are concerned. But one last question to hit you up with, my friend, and that is the Lakers at 28. What is the one player that you've heard that's right around in that range? The one player that you think that the Lakers have to get if he falls to them. There's just, okay, if every other player that slides by there that you could just say, okay, well, they should have gotten him, but it's all right that they didn't. What's the one player that they cannot miss if he lands at number 28?
That's a tough one, simply because with this draft, you just don't know 15 through 35. Any of those guys could fall or rise, or you just never know. I think that, I think the Lakers are in a good position, even though they're picking late in the first round in what is considered a weak draft. I think that there are players available that could come in and possibly help them right away. So let's say Rondo decides to take this offer with the Clippers, and it's hard to replace Rondo, especially playoff Rondo. But I think a Cassius Winston or a Malachi Flynn could be available. Maybe even a Trey Jones could be available. If they're looking for a 3-and-D wing, a Robert Woodard could possibly be available. Maybe even a Desmond Bain slips. He can come in and play right away. If you're looking for a backup big, you could have your choice between Zeke Nnaji or maybe Isaiah Stewart. A Jaden McDaniels could possibly fall, someone who you can develop in South Bay and be patient with him. I just think like the Lakers are just in a really good spot because they should be able to find somebody that can come in and crack their rotation, which maybe Jamias Ramsey could be available. I think they're in a pretty good spot. Isaiah Joe from Arkansas, another guy that is a good shooter. He sprints the floor. He can shoot off the move. And we've seen how valuable guys that can shoot the three off of pin downs and movement are, like Duncan Robinson. Even though he's bigger than Isaiah Joe, but the fact that him moving and being a threat to shoot off the catch opens things up for his teammates. And so giving Bron a player like that, another shooter, is a weapon. So it's hard for me to say one guy, but I think that if there's a need for a playmaker, you should be able to have a choice between Cassius Winston or Malachi Flynn, or maybe even a guy like Teo Maledon. I think the Lakers just in a good spot.
Well, let's hope that's the case and they get a good player out of it. Pokashevsky falls. You never know. That could be someone who they could try to develop. Or Tyrell Terry, if he falls, even though he's been working out with a lot of lottery teams, if he falls for some reason, that could be the case as well. So a lot of interesting choices, like you said, at number 28, who might be there, who might not be there. And there's no pressure for the team to go ahead and pick someone that they have to, because they're in the spot that they are, and they could end up trading it too.
Yeah. So it's tough. But like I said, I think that they're in a position that you can get a guy who could go as high as 15th and could fall to them at 28, because it's just such a wide range of players that I think could help. Even a guy like Xavier Tillman, I think he's ready to come in and play right away. Not a sexy name, doesn't have a pretty game, but he's one of these scrappy role players that I think is going to end up going to a playoff team and cracking their rotation and just kind of making an impact, because he's a big that can pass a little bit. He has a potential to be a decent floor spacer, and then he defends. So there's always room for those guys.
Absolutely. So the Draft is going to be very interesting, my friend. Coming up a week from when we're recording right now, November 18th. I'm looking forward to it. Hopefully, you and I can talk in the not too distant future about the NBA draft even more, because this is our time of the year, my friend. NBA draft junkies, per se. But speaking of NBA draft junkies, I want to go ahead and give you the floor, my friend, on the way out on exactly everything you're doing at NBADraftJunkies.com, NBA Draft Junkies on YouTube, the Run the Floor podcast, and NBA Draft Junkies, wherever you get your podcasts.
Yeah, I mean, it's crunch time for me. This is the week that I've been preparing for. So hopefully I can get all my content out. I wanted to do like team needs for all 30 teams. So I'll have to get on those. I'll definitely have another mock draft coming out. I have a few more guys that I plan on interviewing to finish out their big boards of their mock draft. I have maybe 5 to 10 player profiles that I want to get out. And then after the draft, I plan on doing like a recap and, maybe even interview some guys about their thoughts on the recap, maybe even like do stuff with guys in their favorite team. It's kind of come up fast. I had a lot of things that I wanted to do, but I ended up having to travel a little bit the last 2 weeks, so it kind of delayed it, but it's go time. I'm a week away, so
You might want to hold off that suit, put that still, all those 20, 30 suits that you had for the closet. Just go ahead and maybe save those for if I am this GM of this team, save those for December, man, because those that'll be still very interesting to go ahead and see what your plans are for out there.
Yeah. But I mean, I'm actually just kind of looking forward to getting it over because I'm ready to start 2021. Just kind of tired of looking at these guys,
extra 6 months. I don't blame you.
Yeah, I'm ready to come up with a new group of players and all of that. So yeah, I'm just looking forward to next week though.
Well, we're always looking forward to speaking to you right here at the Lakers Fast Break. It is my good friend, Rafael Barlowe, my compadre in crime when it comes to the NBA playoffs. Hopefully, if you didn't get a chance, you'll hear our banter. You'll go ahead and check out the Lakers Fast Break channel for all those great podcasts. And you never know, he might pop up in part 2 and part 3 of the Championship Rewind. You never know. He an interview from him might pop up here and there. So check that out in the coming weeks as well. Part 1 of the Championship Rewind is already up as you're hearing this on podcast outlets. So check that out. Some great conversations and parts of them right there for you. Again, I'm also going to have Chris LeBron from the Off the Ball, On the Ball Network. He's going to be coming on later this week. And of course, we also have a great prospect, Mike Lenoir, NBA draft prospect, coming on the show as well. So my friend, I want to go ahead and say thank you as always. I know you're going to be a busy man, so I'm not going to go ahead and pester you unless it's for you and me DMing. Did you like the pick? Did you like the pick? Did you like the pick? And we'll go ahead and talk about that off the court. But off air, we're going to go ahead and talk about that. But on air, you're always welcome back. I know we're going to go ahead. I'll hit you up when it slows down for you. Maybe, I don't know. Could that be like 2022 for you?
Who knows? It just came across my timeline that Lakers home games will have no fans for 2021. And Shams is reporting Russell Westbrook wants out of Houston.
So it is a reality now that he does want out of Houston, because Tim McMahon from ESPN, you heard what we were talking about earlier. Those were the reports from him. So if Shams says it, somebody's talking to Shams about that. So
yeah, this is bad because it's going to look like Chris Paul, Dwight Howard, and now Russell Westbrook don't want to play with Harden.
Who knows what will happen now in Houston, but for LA, for other teams, for your team in Portland, my friend, I'm hoping for good things for you for next week for the NBA draft. You never know. Portland's been kind of quiet, so you never know what they have under the radar going on. They could have some things going on either in the NBA draft or free agency. So look out for them, and look out for all the things that are going on with the NBA right here at the Lakers Fast Break. And of course, NBA Draft Junkies. Now is the time to catch up on all your NBA draft studying and all that. NBA draft fans out there, now's the time to go ahead and hit up NBA Draft Junkies, because it is the place to go. for everything NBA draft. Well, my friend, it's been great talking to you as always. I look forward to catching up with you soon right here at the Lakers Fast Break Podcast.